Welcome back, one and all, and thank you for joining me today. As always, I am Daniel Blake, and we are mere weeks away in New England from experiencing that ever so wonderful time of year where we're flooded with autumnal tourists. These individuals come from hundreds, if not thousands, of miles away just so they can go to Starbucks, get their grande pumpkin spice latte with soy milk and extra whip, and to travel 25 miles an hour in a 50 just to take a look at the changing leaf color. Now, other than a brief stint I had in Virginia for college, I have lived in New England my entire life, so I have plenty of experience dealing with these tourists to mixed results. I would say the worst of which was when I was in high school working at a farm stand, because during the fall, that job, which was entirely retail, became about 50% that and 50% a TED Talk on the forestry of New England. Now, at this point in time, I was just some poor 16-year-old trying to make a little bit of extra money for gas so I could go hang out and do things with my friends outside of school. And I really couldn't be paid enough to care about the issues of these tourists. So I basically brushed off and just gave small answers to everybody that asked me something for the most part. Now, there were certain days where I'd feel a little bit more energetic, a little bit more interested in talking with some of these people, and it maybe wasn't the nicest thing to do. But one of the big questions that I would get is about bears. People coming from especially urban areas would be very concerned that while they were out hiking, a black bear would run by and attack their family or something like that. I always made sure to let them know that no, they didn't need to worry about black bears. We do have them, but as long as you're not messing with them, then you're typically fine. They're pretty docile for the most part. But on a handful of occasions, we have a local legend up here called the swamp booger, which is this fictional creature that looks absolutely menacing. I'll put a picture of it right here for you so you can take a peek at it. But I would let them know that they needed to be careful if they're in particularly wet areas like a bog or something like that late at night, because this creature would stalk out individuals and hunt them down itself. Now, this is, of course, entirely fictional. The swamp booger is quite literally just a white-tailed deer's ass that's been Frankenstein to look like that horrendous monster you just saw. So that does not exist. It's not real. So, just a little bit of harmless fun that I would have with these people when I was feeling in the mood. But anyway, sorry, back to the point at hand here. This particular season was great for the business, obviously. It's a big influx of people. You're talking about small town USA, where they do not see that many people on a daily basis, and staying above water as a business is a little bit difficult for a retail mom and pop shop. So the tourism really helped them out drastically. Like, there is no doubt in my mind they make probably 75% of their income a year during the fall season because of this. The big issue, though, as I had mentioned in the introduction, is the congestion that would happen. And just even doing something as simple as going to the grocery store would become a task that would take 20 to 30 minutes longer just because of the driving involved, which is, of course, frustrating to the locals. And, I just really took this moment to think about some other places that probably have it worse or better than we do when it comes to their tourism. So I'm going to use this episode to really dive into why tourism is a good thing and a bad thing, because I know there's others out there that have enjoyed and suffered from the travelers such as I have. Now, of course, from a financial perspective, as I just mentioned, tourism is really great to bring in a lot of revenue to a business in a very short period of time. Now, there are certain models that thrive entirely from this. The ski resorts is a great example of this. You're looking at maybe 5 months maximum to earn an entire year's quota. And without tourism, I just frankly don't think that would be possible. It's not just the employers that benefit from this either. There is a lot of temporary jobs that get created due to tourism that are open not only to U.S. citizens, but also immigrants looking to come work temporarily in the United States. There's a program that I used to work on called the H-2B program, which provides that exact thing, a work permit for a certain period of time for individuals to come on over to the United States and assist these temporary businesses. It's really wonderful to give them an opportunity to make a little extra money, to give, some other individuals temporary employment opportunities that otherwise probably wouldn't exist without tourism. So big plus in my mind, at least. This next point feels a bit silly to say, but I'm going to anyways because I believe it's a valid point. Tourism is, of course, great for the tourists. I think it's amazing amazing that we currently live in a time where travel has become essentially easier than ever to go to some of these amazing destinations worldwide. There is no picture or video or AI that can recreate the firsthand experience of taking in some of these wonders our world has to offer. And so I have to say, for that reason alone, obviously, tourism is great in that regard. I know that I have been very fortunate to travel to some locations that otherwise I would have never ever been able to really understand why they are held in such high regard. So I'm very grateful for that and the opportunity as a tourist to see these different places across the world. The last major positive that I really wanted to talk about today in regards to tourism is that while it is awesome to read about, to be a scholar about cultures that may not be your own, I think the only way to truly understand them is to spend a duration actually immersing yourself in the culture firsthand. There's a lot of things that we can learn from books, but at the end of the day, you're not going to really get the human experience unless you genuinely take the time and spend a year, 2 years immersed in this culture, and then understand that that's not how it is everywhere in the region either. It's just to that place that you're staying at. I think that that's a really cool opportunity that is granted to us, a great chance to broaden your horizons and maybe learn a little bit more as to who you are and what you believe, a great chance to really connect with that side of yourself. I wanted to end the positives by giving a situation in which tourism has been nothing but beneficial to a community. And I can think of no better example of that than Point Pleasant, West Virginia here in the United States. Now, you may not have heard of this little town, but what I can almost guarantee you is you have heard of the reason why it is famous. And that is because in 1966, a cryptid was allegedly first sighted here. And that was none other than the legendary Mothman, who in 1967 was partially blamed for the Silver Bridge collapse. For many years, the residents feared this cryptid, and his story was spread far and wide across the country. However, in 2002, the community decided to embrace the Mothman and had their first festival in his honor to astounding success. People from everywhere came to this festival. It was amazing the amount of money that was brought in. And in 2003, he was considered to be so instrumental to the helping of this town that they erected an Olympian statue to him in the center of town. And as of 2023, there were over 15,000 people that came to this little festival, which generated over $2 million worth of revenue in just 2 days. Point Pleasant is thriving because of the Mothman and the tourism that he has brought in. And honestly, I just love to see how something like a mythos can just totally transform an otherwise struggling community into something so greatly beneficial. It warms my heart to no end. Unfortunately, for every positive that I mentioned for tourism, there's an antithesis to that as well. Not everything is just sunshine and rainbows when it comes to tourism. Speaking from scholarly and personal experience on that as well. So let's dive into that here a little bit and show you why tourism may not be such a great thing after all. While tourism may be great for businesses and their employees, the people it's not great for are the locals that live in the area. Particularly seasonal tourist locations have a tendency to really jack up their prices on goods and services during those months. And so it makes life just that much more difficult to live if you're a full-time resident of that community. Travelers can really budget for their trip and only spend within their means. However, when that's your life and you really don't have anywhere to go, or the commute's going to be significantly longer to get the same prices you regularly do, then it makes it just rough, man. Also, while some communities have been able to properly adjust and prepare their infrastructure for the influx of tourism that happens at certain times of year, certainly that is not everywhere. And where I grew up, that was definitely not the case. You're talking about towns of about 2,000 to 3,000 people on average, jacking up 4 times that amount for a few months. And just nobody, for some reason, year after year is prepared for it. It's incredible to me. And that includes individuals individuals that are just trying to get to work, and you're already kind of running 5 minutes behind, and then you get stuck behind a line of leaf peepers who are going 15 and a 30, which is just delaying you even more, and you're trying to keep your shit together, but inside you just really want to roll down your window and scream, "You motherfucker!" The unfortunate truth of travel, too, is not every single tourist is going to be respectful of the area that they are visiting. Events such as littering or not following signs and climbing on stuff you're not supposed to, which can cause erosion, for example, can be horribly damaging to a lot of these destinations. And even if you do everything correctly, follow the signs, clean up after yourself and all of that, the pollutants that you're creating just by traveling is a lot more than I can guarantee you're doing in your day-to-day life. Whether it be plane, train, or automobile doesn't really make a difference. And in fact, pollution has gotten so bad in some of these destinations that they have had to have been either temporarily or fully closed. A great example of this is Maya Bay in Thailand and Boracay in the Philippines, which were both temporarily closed because their coral reefs were bleaching from human interaction. Obviously, that's terrible. We hate to see that. So it's just important to respect these locations because they may not be there forever. I wanted to wrap up the negatives of tourism by talking about what I believe to be the most detrimental thing caused by it. And that's this weird loop of misrepresentation caused by vendors and misinterpretation caused by travelers. And I'll give a real world example of this. I've been to the cruise port of Cozumel, Mexico on 2 different occasions. And I can let you know, as soon as you step off the boat, you're immediately bombarded by vendors that are trying to sell you trinkets, knickknacks, and other souvenirs as take-homes from your trip. Now, I can't fault them for trying to sell goods that actually sell, but what I can fault them for is everything they're selling is tacky. A lot of the stuff on the bottom of it even says like made in China. So it's not even really the cultural icons that you're there for. And not only that, cruises are particularly notorious for this because you're spending usually about 12 to 24 hours at a location. That is not nearly enough time to understand the culture, its history, and even get a good glimpse into what Mexican heritage means. This is hugely problematic, obviously, because then individuals will go back home. They'll think that what their experience is what Mexico is like in some occasions, and then there'll be this horrible misunderstanding of their culture. This happens everywhere, worldwide. This happens, and it's just a loop that keeps repeating itself over and over and over of vendors misrepresenting their own culture, and then tourists being too ignorant to understand that that is not what the culture actually is. It's terribly detrimental. It creates some real bad stereotypes historically, and on top of that, it can create actually an overpopulation crisis too for people who think that a lot of these locations are just paradises all the time. Great example of that is the state of Hawaii in the United States, and I could make an entire video strictly talking about how tourism has ruined those islands and the people on it. It's really, really tragic. I highly suggest you do research into it. If you want to hear me go over it, definitely let me know in the comments. But it really is a shame what can happen because of this looping situation and stereotypes that are formed. If Point Pleasant is proof that tourism can be a very beneficial thing to a community, then Venice, Italy is the exact opposite. So you guys know that Venice is famous for its canals, and it brings in a heck of a lot of tourists. So its regular population of 50,000 residents is totally dwarfed by the 120,000 a day in peak tourist season. Obviously, this is a very old city too, and its infrastructure was never designed to handle this many individuals all at once, leading to major jam-ups in places like stores, restaurants, walkways, and even the canals it's famous for. Another big issue with this is you may have heard Venice is slowly sinking under the sea, sadly as that is. But it's driving a lot more tourists to try to get there before it's inevitably gone forever, which is driving up pollution to the extreme, especially air pollution, which may not be awful if you're only visiting there for a short duration, but if you're a full-time resident or have respiratory issues, that's a huge deal that can potentially be fatal and make it even dangerous to live in the city. Another big issue with this is Venice doesn't have a minimum wage and unemployment rates are drastically high in the city. What this ends up meaning is that you're going to find some pretty cheap prices for things, but the reason for that is because the big box stores have been able to cause the prices to be driven that low by mom and pops, or risk them closing their doors forever. So it's really, really sad situation, business and employment wise too. And it's gotten to the point where tourism has wrecked this historic city so bad that there is actually something called Venice syndrome, which is the term that is referred to the mass exodus currently happening in Venice to get away from all the tourism. I want to wrap this whole thing up by just saying that I don't think tourism is inherently a bad thing. It just needs to be done in moderation. And I believe there's definitely a world in which tourism can exist, and so can the respect for these destinations and their people. I know this has been a little bit of a different episode this week, so I really do appreciate you all sticking with me this far. If you like the video, make sure to leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it. It does help the channel out a lot. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope you all just have the most wonderful day. Deuces!